Hi class, this is Susan Magee here, and I'm here to talk to you about the fascinating world of memorandums. Okay, so what I have open right here on my screen is just a basic email. And I got this, I was on a group email from Kimberly Chung, who works for Drexel University Online. She sent an email to a bunch of people who are all listed up here. She has hi, okay, so it's obviously not hi Susan because there's a bunch of people. And then she even has a take care Kimberly at the end. And even though she's got her formal little signature block down here. Okay, so if really an email is really a memo, right? Because we've got the from, the date, and the subject line. Why use salutations in emails? And the reason is this. Back in the early 2000s, when people really first started using email to really communicate at work and with clients, and thus became much more accepted. Because people used to say, well, can you fire somebody via email? People get fired via email now all the time. I mean, I don't think that's appropriate, but I mean, there used to be, people were much more afraid of, putting sensitive information in emails and all that kind of stuff. And I even worked in a law firm when I was in grad school, and they were always very, this is confidential, and obviously, it's really important. But everybody has gotten over that, and everybody uses email to communicate important information. Now, the hi and the close and the salutation and the closing are used because, as a culture, we decided that we would adopt that from that more formal aspect of writing into the more informal aspect of emails, right? And that happened probably sometime, I don't know, maybe around 2005 or I'm not exact on the date, but it was around that time, and people just started adopting that, and it became a convention of emails. So if you send me an email, the most polite way for you to do it is just say, Dear Professor Magee, or Dear Susan, whatever. And then I would write you back, Dear Shamir. And then if we keep going back and forth, we're going to drop the Dear Shamir, and I'm just going to be like, just saying what I'm going to say. But typically we use the salutation. Okay, so that is really why we do that, right? So that is just an example of a regular email. So now let's look at another example of an email. So this is another email that I got this week. This was from the Drexel University Human Resources Department. This is different. This is an embedded email, right? So they have the banners, they've got their own format, Drexel University Human Resources, different departments might have a little different banner. And they, it's nicely formatted. It's very hard to get this kind of nice formatting in a regular email. It can be a little trickier. There is definitely a Dear Colleagues. There is no closing, though. But if this was from President Fry, it probably would have a closing on it. So again, this is just, you kind of figure out the conventions of the organization that you're in. But this really is a pretty typical, aside from the Dear Colleagues, the two from What Is This About? This is a pretty typical memo. So when people say, oh, people don't write memos anymore, I laugh, and I'm like, no, it's just they don't deliver them the same way anymore, right? Okay, so that's the second kind, which is an embedded. Now, of course, we have the attached memo. So this is where you would have a memo. You would create it in a Word doc or a Google Doc, and you have the date, to, from, and re. Now, ironically, because we're doing this as an attachment, we don't use a salutation when we're attaching, when we're writing a formal memo. So it's kind of funny that we don't do that but we just say, well, because it's here and we don't need to do that. So sometimes you'll see them signed or initialed. If in the past, if they were being distributed, literally, I would go and go to my inbox and my literal mailbox, and there would be memos, and that's how they would be distributed. Because people, still weren't convinced that, sending them email was, we were sure everybody was going to get them. Everybody gets them. So now this is how you would write a formal memo, and that you would attach it to an email saying, here I'm attaching, the guidelines, da da da, please read it. This just makes it more official, and it also creates a little bit more of a paper trail. So when you see if you can't do the embedded like this, and not everybody can do this, and not everybody at Drexel even can do this, right? But the Human Resources Department is pretty big, and they have their own, system, and they have their own, way of embedding their emails, where a lot of us don't. So if we want to do something and we want to have some importance and make it officious, we're going to attach it to an email. So um, while it's probably more typical of departments to, a department or a president to have the embedded email, most people will be attaching them if they have to. So that's really the difference. The difference is, ironically, in the email, we use a salutation, but we don't in a traditional formal memo. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to memos, and I'll be back in another video to talk about how to format your memo.